What's happening? This is the Tap In podcast. We are live inside of the Tap In studio. This is a special show, man. This is gonna be a good one. I know I say that every week, but this one is a special one that I've been trying to get done for a little while, and he finally blessed us with his presence. Mr. Rabbi Baruch, how you doing, man?
I'm great, thank God. Thank
Good.
you for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem, man. No problem at all. So I know this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a little while, just so I can educate myself. And I know in a couple of weeks back, it was a lot of press about Nick Cannon, Deshaun Jackson, and Ice Cube, where they were saying some, I guess, there were anti-Semitic things that they were saying. And so I'm just ignorant to the fact I don't know what anti-Semitism is. That Semitism. I don't know exactly what that is. So that's why I reached out to you. I wanted to get a better understanding of what does that exactly mean and what is that exactly. Can you explain?
Sure. Anti-Semitism is any kind or any form of anti-Jewish talk, actions, any kind of insinuation to belittle and cause hate to the Jewish people.
Okay.
Anti-Semitism is
put
been
it
around.
a little closer.
Anti-Semitism has been around for, since pretty much since beginning of time, and that's a conversation that we can have. Maybe that in and of itself, but the reason why anti-Semitism is so dangerous, besides personally being Jewish and a rabbi that it affects me, is it's usually a precedent that there's other things coming down the line. Anti-Semitism would be kind of an effect and not the actual cause. Bigotry is a bigger problem. Any kind of hate is a huge problem. Unfortunately, the Jewish people have had to deal with that for thousands of years since they've been a nation, and it usually doesn't end there. So anti-Semitism in and of itself is a terrible thing and should never be tolerated. And I think that is a terrible, terrible thing. But we can't forget that there's a bigger issue at play, that someone who is anti-Semitic isn't just an anti-Jew person. There's hate in their heart.
Right.
And that's really what needs to be dealt with, right? If someone is, God forbid, sick, you can deal with the effect that they have, but you'd rather get to the root of the sickness so that you can eradicate it completely. Otherwise, you're just going to be dealing with symptoms again and again and again. Okay.
So anti-Semitism is just basically hate speech or towards Jewish people, right? Okay. And can you explain to me, because I listened to the full interview that Nick Cannon said. I didn't really pay attention to what Ice Cube said and Deshaun Jackson. What exactly what Nick Cannon said, or what did he do that was anti-Semitic?
I think what's between all three of them is insinuating certain tropes, which are certain ideals that have been pushed for a long time in this anti-Semitic culture, which is that Jews are trying to dominate the world and take over the world, that they run the banks and they have all the money and that they make all the decisions and everything is only just to benefit them. And that is completely false. I like to say, when people ask me about that, the only domination that we're looking for is to dominate the world with goodness and kindness. That's about as far as we are looking for world dominion. And that's it. The idea that we control the banks and that we control this or that and that we have this ulterior motive is completely false. And I know he apologized, and I know Deshaun Jackson kind of had to walk what he said back, and there was that very interesting dialogue between him and Julian Edelman, which was great. And I think, when those things are said, anti-Semitic tropes are repeated, you have to deal with it right away. Because it's almost like, for example, when a child says something, they want to test the waters. Oh, I got away with this. Okay, then I'm going to push it, and I'm going to get away with that, and then I'll get away with that. Well, in this case, these have real life consequences. God forbid, people can get killed, damage to property, who knows what. So that's why when these things were said, right away, these things were taken immediately and dealt with.
Okay. All right. So I kind of want to, I guess, just get a little bit of the history from is Jewish. Is it a religion or is it like a nationality? Like what exactly is it?
That is an age-old question.
Okay.
That is a great question.
Okay.
So what is Judaism? It is a religion, but it's more than a religion. It's like a way of life. So it's really a mixture of both. Judaism is someone born to a Jewish mom.
Okay.
Is Jewish. They have a neshama, a soul. Neshama is soul in Hebrew.
Neshama.
And that's right. And then along with being Jewish, there's also the Torah. The Torah is the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses. And the Torah gives us the blueprint for how we're to live our life. There's rules, you can call it restrictions. I call it the framework of freedom, because when you have a certain framework, then it allows you to be the best Jew. And not just a Jewish person, but even anybody. It's not just a gift that the Jewish people have, which is the Torah, but the Torah contains lessons for all of humanity. There are many laws and ideals that are talked about in the Torah and explained by great rabbis throughout the generations that are beneficial to everybody, such as a judicial system, laws about no murder or stealing or adultery, treatment of animals, all of these things. That's not just a way for a Jewish person to live. This is a way for anybody that they can appreciate and live a good and impactful life in a meaningful way.
Yeah, okay. And is there a, I guess, Jewish people, right? The nationality comes from Israel?
You can have Jews from Israel, you can have Jews from Australia, you can have Jews from all over the place.
Okay, so it's just pretty much wherever you're born, and your mother has to be Jewish in order for you to be considered Jewish?
As far as the Orthodox, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Israel, of course, holds a very dear place to our hearts. It is our homeland, but you don't have to be from Israel to be Jewish.
Okay. So I kind of want to just back up a little bit. How did you become a rabbi?
Okay, so a little bit about myself.
Yeah,
my
yeah.
parents were doing outreach. We are within Judaism, there are a bunch of different sects. There is Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. Within Orthodox, there's what's called Modern Orthodox and Ultra-Orthodox. I'm not a big fan of the titles, but I just want to give you an idea.
Okay.
We're part of the Orthodox sect of Judaism. My parents did outreach. We're with a movement called Chabad. Very good. And that is really all about understanding how your mind affects your emotions, and that your brain is really what's running everything, and you got to keep that in charge, and ways to meditate and serve God, etc. And a lot of outreach is what, that's their main thing, is to reach every single Jew wherever they may be in any corner of the world. And so my parents did that in south of LA, in the South Bay, Torrance.
I know about it.
Lomita,
Yeah.
you know the area.
Yeah.
I was born in Wilmington, so
okay.
Harbor City, actually.
I grew up in San Pedro.
There you
so
go.
Yeah.
So they had a congregation there for a little while. So my dad and his father, etc., they were rabbis already for probably over a century, maybe longer, and also from my mom's side. And then, I went to Jewish school. I went to get a rabbinic ordination, and I got my rabbinic ordination. It's like a degree to be a rabbi. Many people get it, but they just might not practice or be a pulpit rabbi.
Okay.
So I went to work, actually. I did not take over in a community or a congregation. I did payroll and HR systems, and there was an opportunity here in Dallas to help out in the community in the Uptown area. It deals a lot with the young Jewish professional, Jewish demographic. And I thought, sure, hey, man, you can talk sports and spirituality in one shot.
Yeah.
I'm in all day.
Yeah.
And we've been here for about 5 years, my wife and kids, and it's been fantastic.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. So rabbi is, I guess, synonymous to like a regular church, like a pastor? Okay. So you're essentially a pastor for the Jewish community.
Correct.
Cool. And it was a word that you taught me, because I hear it all the time, that you taught me when we talked on the phone or via Skype. You caught it was a mitzvah. Yeah, it was a mitzvah.
Donte, you're good.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
awesome.
I want to get educated on it. So a mitzvah is, dang, if I can remember what it actually means now, it means like, bless you.
A mitzvah is a good deed or a commandment.
A good deed. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
commandment from God. So when you do something good, you've done a mitzvah.
Okay. Now, what is a bar mitzvah?
Bar mitzvah, many people when they hear it, they just think celebration. The word bar mitzvah actually means a man who is now responsible for the commandments. So when a boy turns 13, he becomes a bar mitzvah. He is a person who is responsible to do the commandments. Up until that point, it was all educational. It's on the parents to help educate the child to understand, here are the things that we do and here are the things we don't do. At 13, he's now responsible. He's on his own, so to say, and he becomes counted as a man. We celebrate it because it's a very great occasion at 13.
Wow.
I would not say that I'm a man at 13.
Yeah, that seems young. And he's responsible of the commandments then at that point.
Correct. So there's a bunch of different commandments in the Torah that, just to give you an idea, different types of prayers that we do require 10 men to be able to do different parts of prayer. At 13 and up, you count towards that 10 men congregation, if you will. The Hebrew word for that is minyan.
Minyan.
Yes, a minyan, M-I-N-Y-A-N, is a group of 10 or more men. So when a boy turns 13, he can count towards that. That's like one example.
Okay.
Yeah, so a bar mitzvah just means you're responsible to do the commandments.
Okay. And then I always see people, I guess, converting to being Jewish. Like, what is that conversion period look like? Or how do you, because I know in the black church, it's just called you being baptized, right? And once you're baptized, you become now Christianity. And I know Jazz, like, she's like she's Christian, right? She's super Christian, like in that, like that's dear to her, right? And it's like, where me, I'm not so much where I follow a certain religion. You know what I mean? I'm more spiritual. And I'm more like just want to be good at heart. You know what I mean? I don't follow necessarily this set of rules or this Bible or this thing. It's more spiritual. So when you transition, I guess, over to being Jewish, are you like, what is that transition called, or what does that look like?
Okay, so that's a great question. First of all, we don't encourage conversion. Because we believe every single person, as they were created, is great. So you can reach your potential as you are. You don't need to be Jewish to be redeemed, or you don't need to be Jewish to reach your full potential. God created you as you, so you can be the best you that you are as you are.
Okay.
That's just number one. The conversion process is very intense and intimidating on purpose. Not like, God forbid, people are, if you do this, I'm going to beat you up, but it's very intense. It's a lot of information, a tremendous amount of knowledge, and ultimately there has to be a certain period of time that the person is practicing that type of living, because this is literally a completely new way. Mm-hmm. So this can be years of learning and living a religious Jewish life before they actually convert. So it's called the conversion process. There's no special word for it.
Okay.
But it does take a little while. And we don't encourage people to convert, because it's not that we don't need you, God forbid, to say you're anything less. But what's wrong with you? You're so great as you. Be the best you.
Yeah.
You want to incorporate certain ideals from, the Jewish culture and Jewish faith, go for it. But you don't need to be Jewish to do that.
Okay. Because the only person who I know, like, personally, that has transitioned or converted is Tiffany Haddish. She calls herself the Black Jew. She's a Black Jew, and I'm like, what? Like, I just don't understand that. How, I don't know what she was raised as, but I know that she says she's Jewish now, and I'm like, how do you just become Jewish? I thought that was like a sacred thing, and it's something like you have to be born into. I didn't know that you could just join a Jewish church like that.
You can join, but you don't join right away, and all of a sudden they say, okay, you're Jewish. This is something you're going to have to show your interest, and you're going to have to constantly show it. And if it's something you really want, you're going to go after it and go after it and go after it. And many times the rabbis will be like, yeah, we don't want you to do this. You don't really need it. Almost discouraging you, because if it's something you really want, then you got to show that you want it. There is a decent amount of, as you said, like black Jews. Just recently, Amari Stoudemire, who,
the basketball player,
you better believe it. Yeah. He just finished his conversion process in Israel. He was playing for, I think, Maccabi Tel Aviv, after finishing the NBA. But he completely did it, and it's an amazing journey. You can go up and you can follow him on Instagram, or you can go and Google his journey. It's tremendous.
Wow.
There's some very interesting Jews who have had that kind of journey. A black Jew, as you said, Nissim Black. You got to check him out. So he is originally from Washington, I think the Seattle area. Not Jewish at all. Just a phenomenal story of just trying to find his place in life and in the world, and he ended up converting to Judaism, and he's like a rapper, and so he sings, the lyrics are all about connecting to God and happiness and joy, and these are just two of I'm sure many people who have gone through that.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I didn't know that. I mean, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know that you could and I was just like, I don't know. I just didn't understand it. You know what I mean? I didn't understand what that process was. But I wanted to kind of dive back in a little bit more to, because I know when we talked on the phone, you were saying that black people and Jewish people like have been arm in arm for like ages and ages, and you even made me do some looking up. You told me to look at that Martin Luther King picture on his "I Have a Dream" speech, where it was a Jewish guy next to him. And I'm like, okay, so if this was, because that was 1968 and we're 2020, where did, I guess, the disconnect come in, or what happened? Because I always feel like black people as a whole, that I feel like we're sometimes just isolated from any other culture, any other race. And I feel like we're on this fight alone, and it doesn't feel like we have a bunch of allies. I'm telling you, not until just recently with this whole George Floyd thing, then I feel like some people are now considered allies, and they see like, yo, black people have been like tortured in this country, and it feels like nobody really has our back, or nobody really comes to our aid, or when we publicly say something that we have a problem with, then I feel like a lot of other people in their movement, they jump on and like, oh yeah, but we've been tortured too, and we've been bad, and I'm like, and I started following this one Jewish guy on Facebook, and he was like, this is not the oppressed Olympics. Everybody has oppression, everybody has been oppressed, but this is not the oppressed Olympics, and you don't get an award for being oppressed. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to feel equal. Everybody wants to feel like they belong here. They don't want to feel, nobody likes hate, right? Nobody likes it. Some people, they do it, but nobody likes hate. And I'm just like, how can we get back to that where we are arm in arm with the Jewish community? How can we get back to that point?
That's a really, really good question. I would say it's probably over my pay grade, because you would have to really look at a lot of the socioeconomics and really dive into almost like the decades and the days, the months, the years since that time. So I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I would have to say, just from my personal, small readings that I've done and research, I think where it really went is as there was this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it some type of move to the suburbs or things like that, and the desegregation, if you will, and causing people on their own to do that, kind of put communities in isolation on their own. And when people who used to live together don't live together anymore, the influences on each other start to move away. So you will actually see, there are still some places where there are, a good integration. Listen, I grew up in California, and I grew up in Southern California in Los Angeles, and we had plenty of all kinds of different races, creeds, etc. on the same street. I mean, in the cul-de-sac that I grew up in, we had a Chinese, we had an Indian, we had a nice American couple, and we had ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's phenomenal. It's great to have that, and it helps. But when you have as a whole where people are just kind of moving off to their own, and then when you're on your own, you're just thinking about as normal because that's what's around you, I think that's where things start to get separated, where people start having that division. And, I would love for you to tell me more about that from your side or from the black community side where, staying inner city and things starting to crumble and really taking a turn for the worse. Where did that come from? That's one thing I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
I just want to say one of the other points that you touched on, which is, this oppression Olympics, there's two things that come to mind when I hear that. First of all, the Jews can always claim this has happened to us because for thousands of years, anything and everything has been done between being put into a ghetto, taxed, gassed, murdered, inquisition, pogroms, you name it, it's been done to the Jewish people at some point. So they're not looking for the award. In fact, for the most part, they don't want to even raise kind of like a flag like, yes, this is us. Mm-hmm. It's just part of our culture. And what we take from that is truth hurts sometimes. And when you stand for the truth, there's going to be people who are against it, but you got to stay the course and you got to stay no matter what. And from a lot of darkness, a lot of times that's where the light will shine brightest. And from those terrible moments, there has been tremendous growth. So you're right. The oppression Olympics is it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to look at what's happening and see how they can help that person. That person isn't calling out because they want you to say, oh, that's happened to me too. No, they're calling out for help. So see how you can help the other person.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing to think about, especially in today's climate where you have that happening a lot, and this is being brought up a lot in social media and in the news, is what are we taking from it? How are we going about this to help the people who are calling out in pain? How are we helping them? Not, oh, I want to join you too, and I'm also in pain. So let's do this and let's do that. No.
Yeah.
You can deal with that when it's time for you to deal with that. There's an issue right now on the table. How are we dealing with that issue that's on the table?
Yeah, and I think that's the issue with people who are the all lives matter people, right? It's like it's been shown time and time again that for whatever reason that black people are getting shot in the street, right? And I feel like that's why this BLM movement is so magnetic is because this is we've been yelling and screaming and saying, hey, we have been killed by the police. Like this is unjustly for a long time, you know what I mean? And now that people are actually seeing it, they're actually being able to witness it, see it on camera, and somebody has no gun, they're not even a threat and you being shot. And then the All Lives Matter people is like, well, doesn't All Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter is not saying your life doesn't matter. It's like you said, this is the issue on the table. Can we deal with this issue, get us help, and then we can mobilize, and then, okay, who has another issue? Now that we've got our issue dealt with, okay, now what's the next issue on the table? And I feel like the All Lives Matter people who say that when you say Black Lives Matter, they think it's a strike against other people and other races, which it's not. It just isn't. But to touch on what you asked about, things crumbling, I would have to say me personally, right? Because I grew up in LA on the east side of LA, right? Mm-hmm. I grew up on the east side of LA, and then we moved to San Pedro, and then I spent 3 years in San Pedro, and then I still lived in San Pedro, but I went to school in Los Angeles. I went to Crenshaw High School. Okay. So just me being able to have that dichotomy where I live here, but I go to school here, I was able to see a lot more, or it opened my eyes. We're in the city of LA, right? I feel like the lack of resources and the lack of things to do. You have like 1 million, 2 million people all in this one spot. There's not enough grocery stores. There's not enough malls. There's not enough things to do, parks and things like that. And so you have everybody in this lack of a better word, this crab bucket, right? And so that's when you start the infighting with your own people, and then just the whole community crumbles, right? But when I went back home to San Pedro, it was 5-6 grocery stores to one little block. In San Pedro's, it's a small little city, but you have a number of stores. You have the South Bay Mall where you could go to. That's a huge mall, and just that one huge mall would take care of the South Bay. But when you go to LA, you have to travel a little further out to get to that, and most people don't have either transportation or anything. So I feel like it's a system set up, and in San Pedro, it was like to go to find a liquor store, you will be hard pressed. Like, it's only a number of liquor stores there. I know when I lived in San Pedro, we used to have to go to Harbor City to go to a liquor store right on PCH. And then I think there was one in San Pedro. When I went to school, I could walk by 5 or 6 liquor stores, and I'm like, this is like programmed. This is systematically set up like this. And I'm like, why is it like this? Why is there so many fast food places? When I go to Hollywood, okay, yes, there's a lot of fast food in Hollywood. But you go right up the street to West Hollywood, there's like hardly no fast food restaurants. They're all restaurants where you have to eat. And I think that has something to do with the psychology, the food that you put in your body. And I feel like systematically we have no way out. You know what I mean? Because we're confined to our little blocks in our little neighborhoods, and everyone is trying to. Here's the thing about black people, right? We are systematically been torn down, right? Where we don't have the resource, we don't have the money, right? But nobody wants to look poor. No, black people do not want. I don't care. They do not want to look poor or look like they're doing bad for no reason at all, right? So they would. I feel like a lot of black people would do whatever they have to do to not look poor or to not look like they're struggling or doing bad. I think it's because I want to make sure I'm saying this right. I think it's because black people have been tore down so much that if we could put on the facade or the image that, no, we're still doing good, and then you pile that on with there's not enough resources in the place, it just becomes an ugly scene. You know what I mean? It just becomes real bad. And then and then I also think, I know for me, speaking for me, that when you start feeling like that emotionally, then you start projecting your anger out on other people. You start lashing out on people. You start doing things to other people because you're feeling bad, or I'm feeling bad now. So now I'm going to lash out, and now I'm going to, I'm hurting really. And so now I'm going to say something that's going to hurt you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I feel like I'm rambling, but I feel like because I want this.
No, that's okay. First of all, rambling is good. I'm the Rambling Rabbi. And
yeah,
you can be the Rambling Podcast.
But
I appreciate that, because here's the thing. I'm trying to make mental notes of all the things you're saying to try to come back to it.
I'm sorry. I know it's a lot.
That's fine. I think several things here. First of all, kind of like what we touched upon earlier, you can deal with the effects, but you got to really get to the root of it and deal with the cause. So, for example, when you said Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, once you start making slogans, you're immediately, cutting out and creating a certain defined space. And even if that is not the point of it, people are going to take things a million different ways. So, I think the slogan may have upset people, and maybe there may have been a better way to say it. I don't know. But my point that I want to say is we shouldn't be looking at just the affects. We have to get to the root of it. And this goes in any organization or government. When you look at things that are being said and things that are being taught and encouraged and then they are repeated, etc., across all platforms, that's where people get their information from. So if that is based on something that is bigoted, we have a problem. So if it's a black man saying bad things about Jews, if it's a Jew saying bad things about blacks, if it's a Christian, a Muslim, American, I don't care. Whoever it is, if they are going to be spouting off things that are anti-Semitic, hateful, any kind of bigotry, that has to be cut.
Right.
Because then you get to the point that we're where we are at now.
Right.
And to me, you know, I think one of the things that as Jews and Judaism has really put a real emphasis on is not just education, but what kind of education. And that means, are you living a godly life? Are you living a good and moral life? Period. End of story. Are you doing that? And again, like I said, you don't have to be Jewish to do that. When you said you're a spiritual person, right? You don't necessarily belong to this faith or that church or anything like that, but you are a spiritual person. My question would then be, does that mean that you are living in a real world way? Are you living practically in a good way, that you are good to yourself, good to your family, good to others, or not? And however that happens to be, that's what matters the most. Your actions matter most in this world. So if you are going to be doing things that are good, awesome. If you're going to be doing things that are not good, but call yourself religious, no, that's not good, and that's not acceptable. And I think that's really, I wish I would see more of that being pushed. You know, this idea of let's see more and more and more of people doing acts of goodness and kindness. That has to be the narrative that's being pushed. And if you see people struggling and you see people in pain, how can you help them?
Right.
What are you doing to help them? Put your money into those kinds of causes. See if you can create a certain kind of leadership committee who can create, you know, a huge thing of volunteers to help in these different communities or with people. There's so much good that can be done. You know, I compare it with a parent and a child. When a child screams at the parent that they hate them, I hate you. You've done nothing good. You don't even love me. Do they mean it? Of course not. But they're hurting.
Right.
They're in pain. And they don't necessarily know how to express that properly. So instead of getting upset at them, you realize, I hear that you're in pain. I hear that you're upset. Let's talk about it. How can I help? And it's the same thing here that we need to do on a global platform. I hear that you're hurting. How can I help?
Yeah.
And then when you help, you're encouraging the other person on their own to make the steps necessary to get better.
Yeah.
Right? When you're helping your kid, you don't want to give them everything and do everything for them because then they're not going to learn how to do it on their own. And it's the same idea. So you help with the tools that they will need, and then they grow on their own. This is what needs to be talked about. This is something that needs to be pushed day in and day out.
Yeah.
I had a conversation actually with somebody, and I said after the George Floyd incident, that whole, you know, cop, it was a disaster. And I said, just wait.
You could call it murder.
I'll call it murder.
Okay.
I will call it murder. It was.
Okay.
And it was a horrible, horrible thing. And I said to a couple of people I was talking to, you just watch. Within 2 weeks, we're not talking about it anymore. And things moved on. And then there was another story. And then there's another story and another story. So if we're going to see change, you have to have consistency. So when things happen, okay, you can't lose sight of that. Sure, the world continues to turn and a new day dawns and a new week and a new month. But if the problem is still there, then we haven't addressed it. We need to make sure that still stays on the table and address it. And again, not just the effect, but go deeper, go to the cause, and then root out the cause. So if we have a systematic type of platform and idea with a roadmap in place to call out all forms of bigotry, you know, that's put out on billboards, and that's what's talked about in music, and that's what we put on movies. I mean, just inundate our minds, our social media feeds, everything that we consume. If we inundate that with good messages and positive messages over time, you're going to see the impacts of that in a good way, I believe. And I think that's something I'm just, you know, I'm just myself in Uptown, but, you know, that would be amazing if you can see more of that being pushed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, But I guess my question would be, is that just idealistic, or we kind of, is that like a real world thing that you think that could happen?
I do. I really do. And it's up to the people who have influence to decide to do that. We consume everything and anything and everything as a society. I can say, at least in American society, I can't speak for the world. But we really, I mean, just look at the garbage that is on your, that's being an ad for this and an ad for that. And this person spouts this off and this person spouts that off. And everybody takes it in.
Yeah.
If you put things with meaning in there, I am sure that would be able to succeed. When you're talking about musicians changing what they're singing about, and it's something that's got a more positive tone, actionable items of good, yeah, then people start, singing lyrics, and they realize, hey, I'm singing something that's really good, and I can do that.
Yeah,
I can put a smile on somebody's face. I can give somebody a hug. Well, maybe not in Corona time, but
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I could help somebody out. When that's what's talked about, in sports or in movies, more movies about things like that. And who doesn't love a feel-good story? We all love a feel-good story.
Right.
Everybody's hurting right now. Corona's put a damper. I'm sure everybody's dealing with some kind of sort of depression. We all want a feel-good story. Well, we ourselves can make that feel-good story a reality. So I can't control anything else other than myself. I am always in control of me, just like everybody else is always in control of them. So if every person decides on their own to do something good for somebody else, and that means to listen to someone else, to understand where they're coming from, to learn from that experience, and then be there in whatever way possible, wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's far-fetched. I really, really don't. Of course, it would be something that's much more attainable when you have the bigger influencers, on a American stage, global stage, talking about it. Sure, that would be very helpful. But I think it really starts each individual making that choice.
Yeah, and I feel like it starts from the top down, right? From the president to the senators, the governors, the mayors, the parents. You know what I mean? I think it starts all the way from the top down, and I feel like we need a change. You know what I mean? There's something that just needs to change, whether that's either the president or we need to change somehow. You know what I mean? Just put some kind of I don't know what it is, but I feel like everybody, because I know, because I don't go to church like that, right? And so I'm not involved in community programs, but I want to do that. That's my own personal thing that I want to do. Go out there, and from time to time, me and my wife, we may just, it's sporadic. We see somebody that's in need, and hey, bam, there you go. You know what I mean? That's our good deed for the day. Where if any time, and I just feel like we need to do more of that, like people in general, right? We need to just do more of that.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And, if it isn't coming from the top down, then again, I live a life of there's no excuses, right? You make the bed that you sleep in the bed that you make. So if they're not doing it, and I wish they would, whoever the top down is, you can insert this person, this person, this person.
Yeah.
That still doesn't take away from the responsibility that we have. And again, that's something that the Torah really emphasizes, is the focus on the individual doing good deeds. Sure, we're part of a greater community, and you need to have good leaders, and you need to have good leadership and structures in place, but ultimately it always comes down to you. It's a choice that you can make. There's a really, really good book. It's one of the best-selling books of all time.
What's it
It's
called?
called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. It is
meaning. Okay.
It's amazing. It's an amazing book, and the reason why it's amazing is because this is a man who went through concentration camps. And he says, he developed this idea of logotherapy, which in short is you can be stripped away from everything, but no one can force you to find the will to have meaning in your life. It's always a choice for you to make the will to live and the will to find meaning. And, God forbid we should ever have to come to a situation like that. But I think the lesson is profound. If you're living a meaningful life, then every day is filled with something good. You've got a pep in your step. You've got that, you got that bright light on your face. You're motivated to do things. And I think that's something that, again, we can all do as individuals, is man's search for meaning is something we can all search for meaning. We can take a good look at ourselves in the mirror and saying, how am I going to be meaningful today? What am I going to do that's meaningful today? I guarantee you, when you do those acts of kindness for somebody, that has a major impact on your kids. It does. It's a massive influence. More than anything you say, what you do and how you are influences them the most. And when they see you doing those kinds of things, you're instilling those values in their heart. And it's going to be part of them. And they're going to do the same thing for somebody else.
Yeah. And I guess when I do it, I don't even think about it. I just more like, you know what? Because I used to be in that situation. You know what I mean? I used to be that guy. So, and I know more than anything that I was looking for is just some help. That's all I was looking for at that point. Somebody who just to help me in that moment. And then I'll get to the next moment. But to just help me in that moment was huge for me. And so that's when I do that, that's all I'm thinking about. Because I know what that feels like to not have the resources to be able to take care of myself. And what I wanted to pull up, because you said something that made me think about this, right? Have you heard of what is it called, Matt's Law hierarchy? Have you heard about that?
No.
So it's basically like a pyramid, right? And it says on the surface, right, it's or on the bottom level, it's all your general needs. Be able to eat, have enough rest. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Okay.
So it's
what's it called?
It's Maslow, MASLOW hierarchy, right? And the theory of it is at the very bottom, you need to be able to somewhere to eat, you need to be able to somewhere to sleep, and just have the basic human needs, right? And then once you get past that point, you go to the next level where it's your safety. You want to have somewhere, a nice safety house. And so I think for a lot of people where those bottom needs are, you don't even think about those other needs because you have to, in order for you to move up the steps, you have to have every level fulfilled, right? And for a lot of people, like in low income areas, those bottom needs are not being able to fulfill. So you don't even think about the next person. You don't even think about the people next to you or your fellow man, is because you're basically in survival mode your whole life. You're basically in survival mode, just trying to figure out where I'm gonna eat, where I'm gonna sleep, based on survival. And so until those needs are met, those other needs about helping your fellow man and doing good for people, I don't feel like those things could be done until, like you said, the root cause of the issue is taken care of. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's I kind of feel like it's more like jobs or more, because I remember I used to play basketball for this traveling team, and one of the guys, he used to say, we can go out and feed these people all day, every day. Only thing they're gonna do is get their food, go back to wherever they came from, and then we'll be back next week and do it again. Instead, what the guy did was he gave him a job. He gave him an actual paycheck. Gave them that sense of pride again, you know what I mean? Where they can now start providing for themselves. And the impact that had on them, it was more than just feeding them for that moment. You know what I mean? It was more, it was more than just giving them something to eat, fill their belly for a little while, then they have to deal with it. It was a sense of pride that now they have. Now they can go into a bank and cash a check. And that little bit of help, but it's like they're helping themselves, was like so big. And I feel like in order to actually really get to the root in the inner cities, we have to do something where it's giving them that sense of pride again. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. From a Jewish perspective, one of the ideas of charity is actually, it's one of the highest forms of charity that you can do, is giving somebody a job. Mm-hmm. Because I think I forgot the line, but like if you give a man a fish, then he'll eat for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, he will set. And I think that's a big deal. So again, these are things that, if there's committees that we were talking just a little bit before that can, look at the issues that are really facing some of the core issues that are facing inner city kids, youth, people in general, and see how you can help, again, get to the cause of it, then you would be knocking two birds with one stone, because now not only is the effect taken away, the cause is taken away, and that'll allow maybe not that specific generation, next generation will look at it differently, and then the next generation after that even more, etc. But this really comes back to, again, even if the person is in a situation like that, there are other people who are not in a situation like them, and that's where the helping your fellow man can come into play. And how are you helping? A lot of people feel good. I gave this person a meal today, which is good, but if you can do one step better, set up a job fair, or find a way to get people hired, etc., that would be the ultimate. And then, like you said, that helps create a certain self-esteem and a certain pride, and that changes the whole trajectory of the person and their day-to-day. And instead of looking down here because they're stuck in survival mode, they can lift their head up and look a little higher and have a different kind of aspiration.
Absolutely. The one thing said that I really try to live by: the highest human act is to inspire, right? Said by the great Nipsey Hussle. The highest human act is to inspire. Okay. So let's transition out away from this. When sports, right? I know you're a big sports fan, right?
Lakers all day.
Okay. What do you think they're going to do in this next round?
Okay, so I think the Lakers, they're in an interesting situation. It's actually very similar to Portland.
How so?
I'll say, because they have to deal with another dynamic backcourt duo. I know they weren't very dynamic in the last series, Westbrook and Harden, but they can be, and they can go off. And the Rockets were actually, they had a winning record against the Lakers in the regular season. So the question to me is, how do the Lakers make sure that this team does not run? Fast break, they're in trouble, because the Lakers are going to wear them down. They're big, and they will just beat them up. The same way they did at Portland, they literally looked tired, and they just took them out. That's going to happen if they can slow the game down. The other thing is, and this is something the Lakers have dealt with historically as a problem, the guards and the pick and rolls with the point guard or a smaller guard, and having to switch off that has always been a problem for the Lakers. So if they can handle that, how to deal with switching, I know they have the length, but are they quick enough to do that? And holding fast break, I think the Lakers should win that series.
They're going to have to play like half-court basketball with the Rockets, and then they just have to beat them up inside, get them their guys in.
Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, JaVale, LeBron, they can all get inside, but I think ultimately, they also have to be able to shoot the ball. They have to be able to score. If not in this round, hopefully they win.
KCP,
Danny Green, Kuz, they all have to score, and they have to make their shots. To me, I think where everybody's been waiting for is the Lakers and the Clippers, and I hope that the Lakers take out the Clippers. I just think that, unfortunately, as a Laker fan, the Clippers are the best team in the NBA. They're the deepest team, and I think they've got the perfect NBA 2020 team where, they've got tremendous length, perfect height, a lot of energy, so they're able to get all that stuff done. Ultimately, can LeBron and co, find a way to take him out? But you got to do one step at a time. Take care of Houston first, and then let's see what they do with the Clippers, because after the Clippers dismantled Denver last night, forget it. I was hoping that wasn't going to happen, but it happened.
By the time this comes out, 2 games should be already played, because this is going to come out on Tuesday. So what do you predict on Tuesday the series will be? 1-1?
Yeah, 1-1. I do. I think Houston's
really.
I think Houston's going to take one, and I think just like with Portland, it's going to light a fire under the Lakers, and then they'll really tighten the screws and come out with a series win. I don't think it's going less than 5 for sure. I think it's probably going to be 6 games. You can't just say because the Lakers have certain pieces they're going to win. You have to play the games, and James Harden has shown that he can do all of that kind of stuff. And you never know. What if Westbrook goes off again, and Eric Gordon's a good piece, and Covington was hitting threes in his last game. So you gotta. I'm a pessimistic fan.
I know, but here's the thing. It's when you get to the playoffs, it's about matchups, right?
Yes.
No one can guard LeBron on their team. Nobody can match up. The best matchup that I think they have on that team is probably one of the Marquise brothers. What are the
Markieff Morris?
Yes, the Morris brothers. He's probably the best one that on their team that could probably. Well, he's on the Clippers, right?
Are you saying for the Rockets who against LeBron?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
There is nobody on the Rockets that can really
guard.
deal with LeBron. I think it's going to be an interesting series because, again, it's going to be a collaboration of a full team game. Again, there's going to be a lot of screens. They're going to screen the heck out of the Lakers. They are. I mean, that's how they're going to create space.
That's how they're going to deal with that height and that length and they're just going to try to run like crazy. But I think the same effect that happened to Denver with the Clippers, that first game, they're just going to be gas. So the Lakers are going to take game one. And I feel like
But the Lakers have also shown that when they have a lot of rest, things don't look good.
Yeah.
You know, they were kind of lollygagging around in the bubble.
Yeah.
The Trailblazers were coming in red hot. I know that the Rockets are not coming in red hot. They did not have a good Game 7. But you never know. You really never know.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting, too, on the Eastern side. I mean, the Bucks are in real trouble. I would love to see a Miami-Boston Eastern Conference.
Miami-Boston, you would like that?
I hate the Celtics. I hate the Celtics. There's no team or anything in the world I hate more than the Boston Celtics. But I do. I think Milwaukee, I said this from the beginning of the season, they didn't do a good enough job of surrounding Giannis with talent. You can't tell me Chris Middleton is that guy. And Lopez is past his prime. Bledsoe's a nice piece off the bench. They don't have a good enough team. And you can see when you have a good team, that's always going to be one superstar. Look at the Toronto Raptors right now. I mean, they made it into the playoffs playing a tremendous team game.
Right.
And Milwaukee does not have a good team game. They just don't. And I think Miami loves playing team ball. Jimmy Buckets is just pouring it on. And Boston is going to overwhelm Toronto because, to me, Boston is what Toronto can look like with a star. Meaning Boston plays a very good team game, and they've got superstars. Jason Tatum is a monster. Yeah. He's a monster, and he's got a lot of help. Kemba Walker, healthy, forget it. He's one of the best point guards in the NBA. So it's going to be good, and I think even whoever comes out of the West, don't tell me that's slam dunk and they're going to win the finals. Because, to me, Boston's good enough to win the finals. They have a team. They've got the moxie, and they had the experience from last year when they were young and injured. Yeah, and they're back for vengeance.
See,
so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I thought Milwaukee was definitely coming out of the East. I just thought, but now to see them struggling against Miami is like, because all they do is isolate Giannis. That's all they do from the top of the key though, and it's like, no, you can't, because those people have to be cutting. They have to be moving around because all they're doing is just putting that wall right at the free throw line. And Giannis is struggling to get to the basket. I don't see why the coaches don't see that.
I don't know if the coaches do or don't. I've always wondered that. Like, why is there something that we're seeing that they're not implementing? Yeah. But I think you also have to understand there's a certain, a psychology when you're dealing with alpha males, right? And you got to know what you can say, and you can say what you can do and can't do. And the fact is, these are the pieces that they have. So you're going to have to try to figure out a way to make it work. And I just don't think they have the horses in the stable per se to make it work. When we all said that, the Bucks are going to come out of the East, and it was really with a big asterisk, a big if the guys that they picked up can play with Giannis, and right now they're not. I mean, there's a huge difference between regular season and postseason. There always is, especially when you're playing in the bubble. You don't get the energy of a home crowd or any arena. And your own talent and your own energy is going to have to show up. And I just don't see that Milwaukee has the pieces for that. Yeah. I just hope the Lakers win the title. That's all. That's all I care about.
Is this Giannis' last year? Did he sign? Did he resign?
I think he's going to stay. I know there have been some rumors of him going to Golden State.
I hope he doesn't.
I hope he doesn't either. That's why I'm going to be an optimist. And I want him to stick up for a small market team. I think they can get pieces to help him. I think the East is going to be great if he stays because, I think Philly's in trouble. They're going to have to blow that up and try to figure out another idea. The process failed. Yeah. And it's just really them and to me, Boston. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it'll be very interesting.
Yeah. Yo, Baruch, thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this as well. Can you give your social medias if the people want to get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram as The Ramblin' Rabbi, and you can catch me there. You can always send me a DM. And, to me, again, it's always just about your choices that you make. You can always make the choice to do good, to help, to figure out a way to do something that will ultimately leave this world better than the way we came in.
Good, man. Thank you. And I want to make sure that we stay in contact, man.
For sure.
Because I just think, your network is your net worth. You know what I mean? If you having good people in your circle, it can only elevate you. So I want to make sure we stay in contact. You know
what
I mean?
Of course.
Yeah. Yo, man, this has been the Tap In Podcast. Thank y'all for tapping in with me. Holla.